Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. I am Clark Coffey, and with me, as always, is my fantastic co-host, Cullen McFater. What's up, Cullen?
Not much. I'm happy to be back. It's been, a while. I don't think it'll show quite how much time it has been because, of course, we've been releasing periodically for the summer. But
yep,
this
you've
is our
been gone
first
for a while.
recording in almost, I think, over 4 months.
So that's why we're so rusty, everybody.
Yes.
So if you could just you could tell we're rusty. I probably introduced the podcast in a totally different way than I used to. Although, hey, that's nothing wrong with that. Variety, spice of life. Yeah. But yeah, this is episode 56, and although it's come just a couple weeks after we've released episode 55, for us, it's been, like Cullen said, about 4 months since we've recorded an episode. So I'm super psyched to be back. In the chair here with the microphone in front of my face, with you virtually in front of me, to discuss your pick this time around, which is 1972's Fat City, directed by John Huston. Mm-hmm. So this is a film I'd never seen. So that's always like an extra special fun thing for me, obviously, like being introduced to films I hadn't seen. Now, I'm surprised I hadn't seen it, honestly. I'm really surprised that I hadn't seen this film yet, but I had not. There are, believe it or not, films out there that I've not yet seen. I know, it's crazy. But how about let's jump in and talk about kind of what propelled, why did you choose this film, and kind of just we'll go from there.
Well, I think I think this is actually the first movie we've done that neither of us had seen.
Wait, now, you hadn't seen this yet?
Yeah, I hadn't seen this either. So
okay.
The reason that I chose it was I was kind of curious to see how we would talk about something, both of us having seen it for the first time, because I think this is the first one that neither of us, other than our Herzog days.
Right.
I don't think either of us
way back in the day when we were
family
just
romance and things like that.
Yeah.
But I was just really, as I've talked about, I think we spoke pretty much at length about Connie Hall in our Butch Cassidy episode. And I'm sure that I mentioned that he's my favorite cinematographer, and definitely the one that is the most has inspired me the most through my career. And before that as well. And so I was listening the other day, or a few weeks ago, to him talking about, there's like all these really long form 2.5 hour interviews with Connie Hall online that are really, really fascinating to listen to. Some that he talks just about his life and growing up, and some he talks more about his work. And he mentioned doing Fat City, and I really like John Huston. I love Connie Hall. I really like Jeff Bridges, and so I also was kind of surprised that I'd never seen this. And not only that, I sort of somewhat have like not a personal connection in the sense that someone I know worked on this, or that but my dad's dad, my grandfather, he was a pretty like well-to-do boxer here in Canada. He was the Canadian boxing champion back in the 40s and 50s. So
now, did you know your grandfather personally? Like, did you have a relationship?
Yeah. He just passed away in 2019.
Oh, okay.
So I knew him quite well.
And did he ever regale you with boxing stories?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of them. And wow. Just, and the funny thing, and we'll get into this more in the plot of the film, but the funny thing too is that there's moments in this movie that made me really laugh because, for example, when someone comes out of a fight and they're like, "Did I win?" And he used to tell me these stories about that he would wake up the next morning and have to ask his manager, like, who won, because gosh, your head is so. And I think it's also perhaps on a more serious note too, that it really showed like the devastation it does to your body.
Yeah.
By the end of his life, my grandfather's life, he, had a lot of memory issues, and was, pretty far into dementia.
Like concussion syndrome,
and so you can really see in this, I think, that it really kind of takes the like it's nothing like Rocky.
No, it's not glamorous. This is definitely not.
A coming of age, not coming of age, but like an underdog story about this guy who's really great boxer, and he goes out and wins. Like in this
is not Rocky.
Yeah, you're kind of just watching your main characters like if they're not losing, they're nearly losing. There's no grand victory in this where, everyone runs onto the ring and cheers at the end and he kisses the girl. And that also said that there's not really one main character here. I mean, you've got Stacy Keach, who plays the lead in a way.
You're right.
Billy Tully. But you've also got kind of, the movie kind of splits itself between him and Jeff Bridges.
It's an ensemble. I would definitely call this an ensemble film for sure. Yeah. Well, let's go back to, so your first time watching it, and like we usually like to do here on these episodes, kind of start off with our kind of, personal reaction to our viewing of the film, especially if it's the first time. So kind of what was your, being a fan of Connie, liking Huston, knowing Bridges, of course, and this is like one of his first, maybe it's his second, I think,
major movie,
major film role. He's so young, it almost like blew. I'm so used to seeing him, so much older, and I'm a fan of his work too. But he's been around for, my entire life, since like before my life, and he's been making so many films and been in so many things. I was almost like taken aback when I saw it. I was like, wait, is this like Tron when they like CGI'd? It's like, oh, he looks so young,
exactly.
And then I looked it up, and he's only like 21 years old here. But tell me about, so what was your experience watching the film then?
No, I loved it. I mean, this is one of those movies that really, we've said this so many times, and it's no surprise. It's not like we're going to pick movies that we don't like, but
we should.
I think it's also, to be fair though, it's rare to see not rare. I shouldn't say it's rare, but it's always nice to see a new movie that, and I don't mean new as in contemporary, but see something you've never seen before. Yeah. And really connect to it and relate to it, and not only that, but just that it's like a damn good movie. And so I like how pragmatic John Huston is with his direction.
It's almost like matter of fact, like his direction,
and it's like if he needs to show something, he shows it. Like someone's talking, he cuts to them. If there's an action, he cuts to it, right? And there's no flair on any of his stuff, and I think that works really well with Connie Hall. Again, we'll get into the details of that later, but no, I think that just the overall feel of the movie, how it's just kind of this, it's not depressing, it's not like dour, it's just very, almost in a similar way to The Deer Hunter, where we talked about how it's like you're introduced into this Pennsylvania mining town, and it's like drab and cold, but there's almost this strange like Renaissance romanticization that's not done by the film, but perhaps just looking back on these times. It takes place, this film, in like this kind of Skid Row rough area of Stockton, California, which as you said is
I've driven through Stockton many times, and it is a perfect setting. It is the perfect setting for a place like this. And it's I for those of you who may not know, so Stockton is it is just south of Sacramento, the capital of California, and it's just east of San Francisco, the Bay Area. It's inland, and it's basically kind of an agricultural center. And you see that in this film, of course, where they're basically like picking bagging onions off a
he's got like
field.
A farm job,
and you see that. Now, you drive on the 5 and you go through that area, like you'll see giant trucks filled with onions and like little skins, like flying off, because they're in these like open top trucks, So it's a huge. Now, it's even. I don't know, but it might be even more destitute now there in some ways, because the drought here that's been happening for so long has really devastated the agricultural industry inland in the valley area there. But the thing that you'll smell Stockton way before you see Stockton, because it's the cattle industry is actually what's kind of taken over probably as their largest industry there. And there are a handful of, I'm talking gigantic, like almost impossible to imagine unless you see it, factory farms with cattle, which are actually heartbreaking, frankly, but you can smell it from like 10 miles away.
Just rows and rows of cows in tiny little cages, right?
Yeah, just like giant. Well, they're not in cages, thankfully, but they're these just huge open mud pits.
Oh yeah, okay.
with some shielding from like some roofs, some open roofs, because it's like 110 degrees out there every day. I mean, it's a miserable place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, not to digress too much, but my point is that, wow, is it a perfect place for a story like this to be told?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's based on the book, which also is set in Stockton.
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
shot there.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it's
on
not faking
location.
it at all.
Yeah,
but you know, like that's exactly what I mean. Where it's not, you know, some films like this would go into this realm of being like dour and depressing, and every single scene would
to really dwell in it. Yeah, to
but
wallow
this
in
movie
it.
is much like Huston's direction. It's very matter of fact. You know, it's just about. It's like it just kind of feels like a vignette of like, you know, American life, where you just kind of see this story play out, but it's also got this charm to it, you know, like the characters have these desires. And Fat City, it comes from a term of that means kind of like making it rich,
making it big, yeah,
like, right, like, and so the whole movie is about that, but it's not, you know, it's just done differently. It's hard to put a finger on it, and hopefully by the end of this episode, as we talk, I'll have a better way to put it than that. But
well, I could, I mean, I'm on track with you. I'm tracking. I get what you're saying. I think that it's, you know, it's kind of like, look, life involves a lot of suffering and a lot of struggle, and you know, part of what life is, as we all get older and you come into adulthood, you have dreams, and a lot of times those dreams aren't manifest, and you know, there's a lot of, look, the road of life is a bumpy road with a lot of turns and short, you know, like dead ends, and, you know, it's tough. It can be tough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's like, it's kind of presenting a bit of the reality of that, using boxing as a metaphor, and of course these, you know, characters in that world. But it's presenting this kind of as like, well, this is what life is, and it's not wallowing in it. It's not like, you know, I mean, there's some films that like really just over, like, melodramatic, right? In trying to present the suffering to you, they go so far as to get melodramatic, and then it's just kind of like at least I'm turned off by that kind of representation of suffering and struggle. So I get what you're saying. I mean, this is the first time I've seen the film too. I watched it last night, actually, so I want to have it fresh, and I actually watched it again. I got a beautiful copy of the film on Blu-ray. It was hard to find, though. I had to get it on eBay. There was no place streaming it here, at least that I could see. I'm surprised it was actually such a hard film to find. But I got a beautiful Blu-ray copy that had a commentary track, sadly not from Huston, as you would imagine. It would be unlikely that there would be one. Yeah.
They could use one of those AI voice generator things.
Yeah, exactly. But there were some interviews of Huston, and some other really wonderful features on it. But it was a really beautiful print, actually, a really well done print. A lot of film grain. I think it seemed like it was really faithful to what Conrad had intended.
It's really grainy, I noticed.
Yeah.
Really beautiful in that way.
Yeah, it's really beautiful and very natural. It wasn't any noise, you know, like, not to get too technical, but just, you know, a lot of times on Blu-rays or even 4Ks, they'll do a lot of like noise reduction and grain reduction, and it just gets weird. But this is really beautiful. But I mean, immediately one of the first things that I felt from the film was the cinematography. Of course, you've got this really beautiful opening, you know, sequence where I don't know how long it is before we hear a character speak, but maybe, what is it, like 5 minutes or something, and we've just got you notice right off the bat this contrast between the dark of the interior. All the interiors on this, almost all of them, are shot so dark. You know, the bar and Billy's apartment.
And you get that kind of green tinge to them, you know. And,
like really dark, you know, and then he comes outside, and it's like this blinding, you know, like almost hot sun, you know. It's like a white sun, you know. It's like really, and it's kind of throughout the whole film you have this. There's a lot of it's very dark. Very dark interiors. Bars are really lowly lit, and then characters will come outside, and it's almost just like, you know, and it does such a good job of kind of representing that feeling, you know, if you've been inside a building. And
Connie Hall said that this is one of the things that he talks about in that interview, where he says that, you know, that he wanted to basically recreate that feeling of, when you've been, like, if you've ever been day drinking in a bar all day and then you come out and it's still bright out
and you're just
and
like,
it's like, oh my God, it's so dark in there, and you just feel like crap,
I
and
mean,
the way that
I've
he gets away
experienced
with
that with a movie theater,
yes,
yeah.
but the way that he gets away with that is that he does something that's quite ingenious, where he overexposes the exteriors and then brings it down through this, like when the film is developed, so that when you're shooting outside, the sky gets totally washed out and desaturated and basically becomes a pure white. But then when you lower that exposure, you get kind of a regular exposure on the actors and the characters, and but that's, again,
it works wonderfully. So I noticed that like immediately, that was one of the things, because that's kind of, we have this montage that's kind of introducing Billy and kind of introducing Stockton as like a setting for this film. But as it just went, I mean, yes, it's very beautifully photographed. You notice that immediately. I was really, so just kind of initial impressions, Stacy and Susan's scenes together, especially they have like a longer scene in a bar where he bangs his head on a jukebox, are just exquisite.
Oh,
just the chemistry that they had was fantastic.
Yeah.
You can, I mean, I was just really impressed with the performances here. The authenticity of so many of these like supporting characters, which I didn't find out until later. A lot of them were like real boxers or local people there. There's a great scene where they're like, Billy's out picking these, or, cleaning off these, bagging up these onions, and he has a conversation with another worker who's out there talking about his wife, and it's like, wow, the authenticity, of these characters. It's just, and it's Huston hired a lot of non-actors, frankly. So that really stood out to me. And the other thing, and I really liked the film too. So I really enjoyed the film. I had a great time watching it. I was intrigued by the boxing choreography and how the boxing was shot. And I think because, before having seen this, so even though these films were released after Fat City, I had seen these films before Fat City. So films like Rocky and Raging Bull. And of course, I've seen a whole series of Rocky films, as a kid before I ever saw this.
20 of them.
Yeah, like 20 of them. Yeah, I think I've only seen like maybe 5 myself. I haven't seen the past, 10 that have been released. But, I saw like through where he fought the Russian guy and the, and like, I will break you or whatever.
Yeah.
And Mr. T and
the robot comes out.
But I was particularly like surprised. I don't know, surprised, but the boxing choreography, how that was shot, I was almost taken aback a bit at first by how different it felt than how other boxing films approach that. At least
how
I've
ugly
seen.
It almost is.
Yeah,
like that. It's not. Every time you see a boxing movie, it's always very dance-like, which can be true for real fights.
And it's not, and it's like and it's been a while since I've seen Rocky, and it's been a while since I've seen Raging Bull, but it's almost like, so obviously these are not pro level boxers. They're like amateur rated boxers. They're like lightweight. They're not heavyweight. They're in Stockton. They're in these tiny little places, but it was almost like they didn't know what they were doing almost. Like it almost was like when they were in the ring, it was like, have you ever seen kids, like young kids play soccer?
Well, I know.
They just like swarm the ball, and it's just like you have this little swarm of kids just following the ball around. Nobody like plays position. I almost felt like the boxing was presented in that way, where it was just like this flurry of just like punches, pop, punch.
Yeah, and everyone almost seems like exhausted. There's like this,
and there was no like, because if you, at least in my imagination, when I like rewind Rocky and like play the fight scenes in my mind, in a film like that, it's like every punch is like emphasized, right? There's like this, and it's to like the nth little detail. Every punch, every dodge, every uppercut, every jab is like so taken apart by the film and the editing and how it's shot and close-ups. And this was just kind of like, for the most part, We've just got a wide shot of two guys just like going, just like this little flurry of little punches,
Yeah.
and you can hardly see like what's really happening.
There's no like technique, but I kind of I kind of liked that because it's to me it's not these boxing matches aren't taking place in big
right. It's not like Vegas
arenas, right?
Yeah.
They're in these like back rooms of like gyms and
Totally.
like little tiny kind of concert halls or something.
And they're not
right?
professional boxers.
And they're not exactly. And so there's this real, I think if there's like an overarching theme of the movie, and it's not this in a cynical way, but there's almost this like pathetic kind of element to it, right?
For
Where
sure.
it's like, and especially when it cuts way out to like the wide shot, and you see the whole kind of the audience. It's not a huge audience, and then you just get this little tiny ring in the middle, and you just kind of see them like falling over and trying to punch each other, and there's it's like I think that the movie really
it was almost
again,
humorous.
even though it's sort of an ensemble, it sort of does a good job of putting you into Ernie, like Jeff Bridges' kind of shoes, where he starts out as just kind of wanting to do it for fun.
He doesn't even
at being a professional, and then it's Billy Tully who convinces him, go on, like I'll introduce you to my manager, my old manager, ex-manager, but and then by the end of the film, spoilers, but we don't usually go through these things chronologically. So but by the end of the film, Jeff Bridges has kind of left that, and he's good for himself. He doesn't drink. He's got a kid, and he's a
working man. He's got a family.
And
by the end of the film,
kind of see how he kind of is introduced in this life really briefly. Kind of thinks it's a little bit pathetic, and then moves on. And
it's interesting,
fascinating.
It is fascinating, and that and it almost makes you wonder, if Billy kind of uses him, and maybe in a not consciously, not maliciously, but almost uses him, right? He probably sees a younger him in the gym, right? And he's probably mostly talking to himself when he's like, "Hey, you've got potential," but there's another part where they're talking, and he's like, you're soft. I see that you're soft inside, right?
Yeah.
And I almost wonder, in a way, is Ernie really kind of like a mirror to Billy in a way, or he's kind of and so it's almost like it's really Billy who wants to get back in the ring and prove himself, and maybe because we find out later, he hasn't been around to the real gym, to his manager, in a long time, and the excuse is kind of like, well, he owed him money. But come on, that's not really why he owed, I think it's because he kind of, maybe he recognized that he was soft inside himself, or he was afraid that he was soft inside himself, and that he, didn't want to show his face. But yeah, so the performances I thought were just outstanding. Now, I had never seen, I don't think, in any other performance, Susan Tyrrell.
No, I don't.
Had you ever? Because I don't think so. At least nothing that was significant that kind of registered her to me. But I was really impressed with her performance on the film, and almost kind of in a little bit of a way, she really reminded me of Faye Dunaway in Barfly, which is also a really good. And actually, I think I'm going to choose that for our next film, because I feel like there's a lot of connective tissue. There's a lot of like. There's some through lines here. I feel like it'll be fun to kind of compare and contrast. Of course, that film is not about boxing, but it does have an element of that symbolically.
And Susan Tyrrell is referred to as a barfly in this movie.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I think she primarily did stage work.
I think before this, and then
did some work with Andy Warhol. It looks like, and. So,
she did some smaller things, and I think even towards the end of her, career in life, exploitation films and things, I think she had kind of a challenging life and health issues and some stuff. But here's what blows my mind. This just blows my mind. Do you know that she was like, I think something like 26 when she made this film?
Yes.
And Stacy was like 29.
Yeah. I know.
And he even says it in the film too, But when he said, when Billy, when Stacy as the character Billy says, like, because his character is like almost turning 30, I almost lost it. I was like, how in the world could you be only like?
That's
I thought he was like
literally,
50.
I'm almost that age, right? Like,
I thought he was. I thought he was seriously like at least his face.
yeah.
I mean, talk about what a perfect casting then for. I mean,
my
because
God,
his
yeah.
face just says hard life. You know, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Like
Because Keach was born in 41,
yeah.
and this is 72.
I think he was
so
29 when he's filmed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was, first of all, I was just blown away by that. Like Bridges, yeah, he looks his age.
Yeah.
But Stacy as Billy, I was just blown away. But even more so than my point that, you know, here they are relatively young. Both of them are young. And wow, did they just do an extraordinary job of playing characters with, you know, so much more road behind them than their age would lead you to believe. You know, their real life age.
See it in their eyes, yeah.
And she was nominated for an Academy Award for this film. Didn't win, but she was nominated. And I think this film didn't, you know, I am not a Huston historian, I will admit. But I think, didn't Huston have kind of maybe a decade or so of kind of, he was in a little bit of a downturn, right?
Yeah,
with
he
his
had some
career
flops, yeah.
before this.
He had some struggles with making, you know, successful films for about a decade, yeah.
And this film, I think, kind of like, it was like very critically acclaimed, of course. I don't know, do you know if it was commercially successful? I'm not quite sure.
I believe so. I mean...
So it's kind of a bit of a return.
I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I think that it did pretty well. I know, like, Roger Ebert considered it one of Huston's best.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it would have done decently. There's not really, I can't really find much information on the exact box office numbers, but
yeah.
it played at Cannes as well.
And this was an amazing year for films too.
Oh yeah. I
mean,
oh my God. We were talking about this earlier, but it's this year of movies today would be unheard of.
I know, it's extraordinary. I mean, so this, you know, so for it to live in the year of The Godfather and Deliverance and Cabaret and Last Tango in Paris, and you know, Huston actually had The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean was actually released in '72 as well as another Huston film. I think was pretty successful. Matter of fact, at least commercially, I know it was. So a lot of big movies, and so for him to kind of, I mean, you know, rise above all of that even and get so much acclaim is pretty amazing. Well, you know, we're kind of bouncing all over the place here, and that's just how we do it. But you know, it sounds like that you've done a little research into Conrad Hall's work on the film. Would be kind of curious to hear a little bit more about what you've learned as far as his approach, techniques, or anything else that you might be able to share. Because I would agree the film has a really extraordinary look and a unique look and feel to it that really kind of grabbed me and pulled me in.
Yeah, I mean, Conrad Hall, one of the reasons I love him is that he's such an adaptive cinematographer.
Yeah, right.
You know, he doesn't. You can always tell it's a Connie Hall movie because it's beautiful, but it's like, you know, two of his movies can look totally different. I mean, this looks nothing like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with maybe a few stylistic through lines, but
and he did Cool Hand Luke too, right?
He did Cool Hand Luke.
He's done a lot of films, but
Cool Hand Luke actually, I would say, looks a little bit more similar to this, just because those farming scenes when they're out
those
in the
white
woods.
Those white sky exteriors where it's just, and you can, and that was one of the things that, I mean, I could just feel and smell this film.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like I could literally
sneeze,
and I feel like Cool Hand Luke is similar, just like the heat.
Well, because he loved texture, like he was such a cinematographer who loved to play. And so that, like, so few other DPs did it at the time, but like even just like in this, playing with the grain for the interior and the exterior scenes, where the exteriors are almost grainless because they're overexposed, whereas the interiors are really grainy and dimly lit, and you know, using that grain to kind of have this grimy feel of like the inside of a bar at 3 p.m, which is
right.
The worst time to be at a bar.
In Stockton, no less.
Especially in Stockton, yeah. But he, you know, his choices and that sort of thing, where it's like you've got a cinematographer who's working, and he wasn't a perfectionist. You know, I think that's one thing that I love about Hall as well, is that his philosophy is what he called magical realism, I think was the term that he coined for it.
Okay.
Which basically means like, look at a situation, look at the light in a setting, and, you know, make it sort of magical, but not necessarily like in a positive sense, but just kind of bring like that extra layer of like a fantasy to it, because it's a film, you know.
Yeah,
so
right.
So like heighten, you know, if there's light coming in through a window, heighten that by putting a more powerful light out the window and hazing the room, and then you've got like a beam of light coming in. You know, if there's one portion of a place, like if you're in a bar and the lights over the tables are like blasting down on the people, then, you know, he was a really simple cinematographer in that way, and I really like that. I admire that. He never felt gimmicky. He never felt like he was going into a place and setting up, you know, 2 million lights because he wanted to show off. Like his, you know, oftentimes his actual philosophy was just kind of to take one single light and find a source for it, and then just bounce that one single light source around the room with mirrors.
Which you see in these bar interior, a lot of this, you know, these conversations, like I mentioned earlier, the really wonderful scene between Billy and Oma, where he says, like, you can count on me, you know, you can count on me.
Yeah.
Not only is that a really extraordinarily well written and well acted scene, and one of my favorite in the entire film, but that's, I mean, I feel like that's a great example of the lighting that you're talking about here, and it works so wonderfully thematically, where she's kind of sitting in front of that window, and it looks like it's the only, I mean, it feels like it's the only source of light really pretty much in this bar.
Well, and that's what magical, like that's what I think his term means, is that the scene doesn't look lit.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
it just looks like it looks like a movie. Like, it doesn't necessarily look like real life. It looks like a heightened version of real life.
Right?
And
yeah,
I think that you know, that really lines up with my sensibilities and what I like out of images. But it also, I think, really works for films like this, where, again, you're looking at this. Like, I don't think it's a pessimistic movie. And I don't think that the way that it's lit is pessimistic either. It's realistic. It's authentic. And I think that it really, again, Connie Hall wasn't a big fan of grain. Like, he usually tried to get, that's one of the reasons that he actually liked overexposing exteriors, was because it would get rid of so much grain and make the image really clean. But just because it's his personal preference doesn't mean that he can't go, you know what, this scene should be grainy because it should feel gritty. It should feel like you want to take a shower after watching it, right?
Which you do.
You do also film. Looking at some of these characters, you kind of want to take a shower.
Well, and I a fun little tidbit that I learned, you know, apparently, I guess when they were in production and the studio was getting, you know, dailies back, I guess, apparently, or, you know, starting to lay eyes on some of the first footage of the film, or maybe it was like the producer, I can't recall exactly, but there was a little bit of a concern in the beginning with the way these interiors were lit so minimally, or they were, you know, really dark. At that time, drive-in theaters were still a pretty big source of income. They would, you know, some drive-thrus would still do first run, but there was, of course, a lot of second run. And so there was actually a pretty decent amount of money there to get, you know, to do the drive-through circuit. And they were really concerned that that all of those interiors were so darkly lit, or
you wouldn't be able to see them.
You wouldn't be able to see, you're right, because it's, you know, it's a whole different situation. You're like, boy, how far back are, you know, it's the projectors having to.
You're always going to have some ambient light.
You're going to have ambient light, and, you know, all the reasons why, you know, the picture quality on a drive-in theater is nowhere near what it would be in an actual, you know, real interior, you know, inside.
Yeah, who
theater.
cares? It's just a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of teenagers anyway. Like, well, you know, they're just making out in the car anyway. Who cares? But they were like really concerned about it, and it was almost kind of came to, you know, and Huston had to really fight for that apparently.
Well, I mean, what's funny about that too is that Mirrors, another, you know, film from this year, The Godfather, where Gordon Willis had to like fight tooth and nail to you know, he intentionally underexposed so that the producers couldn't bring it up in like, so there was nothing in the shadows for them to pull out of it.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's,
Well,
that to me is really important is being able to make those choices. And I think that shows why these like Gordon Willis and Connie Hall were such lauded and
yeah.
memorable and famous and inspired cinematographers, is because they made these creative decisions so that they're, when they made, as Connie Hall puts it, when he painted with light, that nobody else could come in and change that. And I think it shows. I think it shows in how good these movies look.
And it's interesting that you mentioned Godfather, and I'd actually just recently been watching those films, the trilogy, in the new 4K release. And so I just recently watched the first Godfather film, and you're right. The interiors are often quite dark in both, but they are so different. They are so different looking. Yeah. And The Godfather is such a warm film. Those interiors are so warm. I mean,
and looks much more
and much cleaner,
lit,
much cleaner.
Looks much more intentionally posed,
formally,
not in a bad way,
but
but not. Yeah, they're so different.
Yeah, so different. And so even though they kind of have this similar, dark interior, they couldn't be more different. I mean, I have a totally different reaction and kind of feeling to the way that Fat City is shot, than Godfather, which is, it just goes to show. I mean, even it's just extraordinary the impact that seemingly even small decisions can have on through the course of a whole film, on how it hits you, on how it resonates with you, how it combines with the story, performances, script. Which is just part of what I love about this, but
I mean, that's honestly to again, not to get super hyper technical, but one of the benefits I think about shooting on film in general as well is that it's a lot easier for a cinematographer to physically sort of bake in that look to the celluloid, and to have their decision kind of physically imprinted on the film, whereas with digital cameras there's just so much latitude, and there is a lot of latitude with film in a lot of ways, but in terms of color and in terms of like the way that you're lighting, you can alter a lot more with digital cameras. And I think that's why so many movies these days look very similar, because there's kind of a like homogenized, like, okay, this is how you light an interior, or this is how you color grade an interior, and this is how and
once it's out of the DP's hands. I mean,
exactly.
Whoever's managing the post and approving all of that, they could. You're right. I think there is more latitude, and it's certainly cheaper. I mean, it is certainly cheaper to manipulate those things. It's funny, it's just to digress a tad. I mean, you're talking about kind of, DPs, quote unquote, protecting their choices by shooting in a way that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to change those choices once the film's been shot and it's kind of out of the DP's hands. It's funny, actors will often do this too. And you'll see like where, the director, the actor's kind of doing the scene the way they think it should be done and the way they want to do it. And the director's like, okay, but try this other way. And so instead of just flat out saying no, they don't want to try this other way. Because of course, once an actor's done, I mean, they have no say, generally speaking, for most actors. Unless you're, a huge star and you're also producing the film and everything. Yeah. But once you've done your performances, that's it. It's out of your hands. So you have no say on what take might be chosen. But they'll like just completely sabotage and sandbag, the takes where they're doing it the way that they don't want to do it. But they also don't want to be seen as somebody who's saying just flat out no. So they'll just like sandbag those scenes. So they're like, okay, I know they can't use that. They're not going to pick that take. So I almost kind of...
you can chop up a performance so much in the edit, and But the I think that's funny. That they'll just flop the...
You just sandbag it. You're like, no, I don't want to... And I think I've even done that before, where I'm like, no, but not often. I mean, I'm literally thinking like maybe once or twice I've done that before. Oh my goodness.
But no, I think it's and it goes to show on a wider level of this film that you have, there's a look, there's a choice behind how this film looks. And it's not, it's
well, there's a lot of choices. I mean, you look at everything. I mean, just to kind of, obviously the cinematography, which you're focusing on, has a big thing to do with that. But it's like, the script is written in that kind of matter of fact way too. There's like this really beautiful poetry in the language that these characters speak.
Written by the author of the book as well.
Right. And which was Leonard Gardner. And I don't think does he have any other books? This may be his only novel.
So.
I think. But and I'm sure Huston, had a little bit to do with the screenplay too. Although he's not, I don't think he has any credits in that regard. Leonard is the sole screenplay credit. But there are some significant deviations from the book. I think the ending is a pretty big deviation, and so Huston may have. It does feel like it's kind of a very Huston-esque ending to me.
Yeah.
And the book does. I've not read the book, but I have read though that it's quite different. But I mean, just in the casting, Stacy, I think is perfectly cast. His face, I feel like everything from like the scar on his upper lip to just and the way that we were kind of joking that at 29 he almost looks like he's 45 or 50 years old.
He looks like he's seen some things.
I mean, really, and it's such a beautiful contrast with such a young, fresh Jeff Bridges, because that's the point. But that contrast, and I think boxing is, to just the costuming, the location of Stockton. I know it was in the book, but choosing to actually shoot there for real. Just every choice really does support, all those that came before it. And it is a really fine line. You were talking about how, although it does, the film does a good job of kind of showing these outsider characters and kind of in desperate situations. I mean, there's alcoholism basically, like at least a couple, at least
alcohol is like a huge part of the movie. Yeah.
At least Stacy and Susan are alcoholics. I think like they're presented like they drinking constantly, and they're drunk, and they're in bars during the day. So it's like these desperate situations, but you don't feel like it's over the top. There's that's such a fine line to walk, and I feel like all of these little choices, if you would have pushed too far on any of these choices, it would have just fallen over. I think the story would have just fallen over.
It would have been too heavy-handed.
Would have fallen over. Yeah, and it would have been so easy to make this melodramatic. It would have been, and I can just imagine, all the ways, that the music, the score, there's the performances, there's so many ways where it could have just fallen over. And I feel like it's rare to find a film that can walk such a really razor sharp line for the entire duration of the film, which I think is important to note is short. It's 97 minutes long.
Yeah, it goes by. Yeah, it's like by the time you get to the ending, you're like, oh wow.
And I think if it were any longer, it would have also fallen over. Yeah. I was listening to the commentary that apparently there was a lot of scenes shot between when Billy goes back to Oma's apartment, and he's given his things in a box, and then when he meets back up, so between that and then when he meets back up with Ernie, there was a lot more shot. Apparently, a lot of scenes that kind of showed Billy going downhill,
like descending. Okay,
descending, and I think this is a good decision. I think and it was about maybe 15 minutes ish or so, and they ended up leaving that on the cutting room floor because it was just like that would have pushed it over the edge to like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm being bludgeoned by this film.
We get
now.
It's
just too much, just too much. Yeah. But it's always interesting to me because those decisions are so difficult to make in the moment. Of course, hindsight, you look at the film, it's done, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And Cullen, you've made films. When you're in the moment, all those choices can be they're so fragile.
It's hard to remove yourself from the work too, and like look at it with sort of a third eye. It can be really, I can.
But you never even know. Even like you never, you just, and there's just a certain element of just luck or something where it's like it comes together and it works, and that's always impressive to me when I see that, and I'm always really curious about that. Like how, I kind of want to do like like an autopsy, like a post-mortem or something. Like, how did that, how were they able to do that? And sometimes it's just, it's an alchemy that's impossible to dissect at the end of the day. But anyway, I guess my overall point for that huge giant rant was just that I was extremely impressed with what a fine line I felt like the film walked well.
Yeah, and again, it's subtle, it's authentic, and I think, again, it's not like we talked about this beginning, but it's not dour, and it doesn't feel. And I think had they played up those elements, like you said, it would have just felt so over the top and so like just you're just being
Well, I imagine, not to like beat a dead horse here, but just kind of in a funny way, and I don't know if we can think of any examples off the top of our head, but you're talking about how we never cover films we don't like, but that doesn't mean that we can't use them as contrast to films we do. But I'm trying to think in my mind. I mean, I know generically I can just remember snippets of films where it's like, because there's so many of these like addiction films or films that are representing like alcoholics or alcohol abuse or drug use or abuse, and they're almost comical in the way that they represent these characters, because you can tell that the director or the people making the film are really trying to make this seem quote unquote bad. It's bad, okay? And it's like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's just like so time. Ridiculous.
No, I have a specific example of a movie that was actually quite popular a few years ago, but
Hereditary was a good horror film.
Midsommar. Which was Ari Aster's movie after Hereditary, because I actually liked Hereditary, and then saw Midsommar, and I just remember sitting through that and being like, I get it, life sucks. like people are miserable.
Now, what was that? Help draw me in on where you see, because I'm trying to. That was the movie where weren't they like they go on vacation in Sweden or something?
Yeah, they go to like
and they take festival. Shrooms. And
it's like there's like the ayahuasca thing or whatever.
Or ayahuasca, yeah.
But yeah, she's like, the movie opens with her whole family dying, and then her boyfriend is, doesn't care about her, and then they go to this thing, and then all her boyfriend's friends kind of don't want to be there, and then it's like every single
super
element is like made to depress you and be like, oh, this is so sad. And I just by the end of the movie I was like, I'm just exhausted, I'm tired of this, I don't know. And it was very long, and so
and that I think that's exactly why they left that 15 minutes out of Fat City, which was a good call. But I think that it's a kind of another little angle to look at it, is that maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you felt manipulated. You could see the strings. The director.
Yeah, it's just it wears this on its sleeve. And it's And I think that's the thing about this, is not that the movie in any way to me started to drag Fat City.
Yeah.
However, it's really nice to watch a movie and to go, man, that ended at the perfect time.
And I didn't know how it was going to end. Like, this was not a film where I had it figured out. This was not a film where
actually, when it cuts ahead, I was kind of taken aback. Like, I was kind of surprised that, like, oh, this is, and it does that also in a really genius way, where it kind of, at the moment it cuts ahead, you don't really realize it's cut ahead, but then they just give you the clues contextually. Like, they don't need to show a montage of everyone moving on and Jeff Bridges going off with his wife and having a kid and things like that, but instead
set it up.
It just, you come into this moment that's kind of the last set piece of the film, and you feel like the way that the characters perform, that significant time has passed. I think it's supposed to be like 6 or something, or no, I guess it'd be more than that, because he's got children now, so clearly it's been about a year or more.
Something. I mean, he still has his like busted nose. So I'm not quite sure. I didn't catch exactly how much time was implied had passed, but you get the sense. You don't need to know exactly how many months or whatever.
It's time has passed.
It's irrelevant. Yeah. But you remind something too, just to go back a little bit, to kind of directing choices and cinematography choices in that scene in the diner, and they're talking, they're kind of looking at this cook, like, and like, God, can you imagine like what that life is like?
Waking up every morning,
like waking up every morning, and then we have Billy kind of turn around, and he looks at all of the people there, and there's this really interesting. It's like, looks like a freeze frame.
Yeah, it goes like tableau for a moment. You can tell the actors have frozen, like that they've.
But there's like smoke rising. Right. There's like a...
Yeah, and cars continue going by outside.
Yeah, so it's like a fake freeze and kind of a pan.
Kind of a Gus Van Sant almost.
Kind of. I was surprised by that. It was probably the most like obviously stylistic choice of the film.
But it really hits in that moment. Like you can kind of feel that he just has this suddenly realizes how distant he is from.
Or like really have entered his mind.
Yeah.
You know. But that just stood out to me. I thought that was like I was like taken aback. I had to
even just the fry cook that turns around and smiles, and the fact that Tully was a fry cook at the, that's the job that he gets fired from, right?
Right.
And so it really, again, without saying much, it leaves you with that feeling, like it leaves you like kind of lingering in your mind. This melancholic kind of ending.
Yeah. I think melancholic would be a good way to describe the film. There's a bittersweet maybe too,
Yes.
Mixture of like suffering and lost, but also that like, hey, this is life. This is life.
And there's a recognizing of, the worst parts in that, but but it's not like something where, Tully comes out of it in denial, and like it's quite clear that he knows, that things could be better. Like at least that's the sense I got, that there's this almost like tinge of not necessarily hopefulness,
but
hope. I guess hope is a decent word for it.
I think there's some hope. There's some hope in the film. All right. Well, and on that note, on a note of hope, we'll end on a note
Happy
of hope.
ending.
But yeah, man. Well, I'm really grateful for your pick. I hadn't seen this film, and I feel like I'm better for having seen it. If nothing else, I feel like it's like it's like stay out of day drinking in bars.
Stay out of day drinking and stay out of boxing.
Stay out of boxing. No kidding. That's maybe the biggest. That's the biggest, and maybe sometime. Maybe in the future we can have kind of episodes that are based, or I'm just totally riffing now. I just thought of this, where maybe we could have some themed episodes where we cover like say boxing films in general. Because just real quick, I know because I'd also watched $1 Million Baby not too long ago before this. Is boxing is one of those like commonly used or sort of commonly used, symbols. Right, like thematic symbols about used in a lot of storytelling. So maybe who knows? Maybe someday we can kind of cover like boxing as like a theme in cinema and kind of what that means and everything like that. But anyway, I digress.
No, I like that idea.
So maybe we'll do something like that. All right. Well, hey everybody, if you've stuck with us this long, we appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it. If you stuck with us this long and you didn't enjoy it, that's super weird. But hey, whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat, we still appreciate it. Cullen, it's been a pleasure. I missed doing our podcast, so I'm glad that we're able to do this again. But until next time, everybody, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.